What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Boardroom Podcast, where we help you stay calm, change lives, and have business on your terms. I'm super excited because I have Brody here with me, Brody Lee. Now, besides the fact that I love saying his name, Brody's just an awesome, I call everyone Brody. So when you came into the circle and your name was Brody, I was like, we're going to have a good time. But Brody he's an exceptional human being. We met in a mastermind, we connected, and we're working on some projects together. But this dude his area of genius is putting together virtual and live events and turning events into real life money printers. Brody is you've got a pretty wild background for how you even got into events.
Yes,
and I definitely want to get into that, but I just want to grace the listeners with your area of genius and give us a little background. Like, how did you even get into events? How did you discover you can make a shit ton of money using an event?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me and for that incredible introduction. The short version of this is that I used to run large events for Apple. So, Steve Jobs, this is like a long time ago, Steve Jobs is still around. He would do these massive product launches and they would be this huge thing. And he's arguably one of the best salespeople from stage of all time. And then what would happen is after those events, then people would line up at the stores around the corner, sometimes overnight, to get the latest iPhone when it dropped. My role at Apple at the time was I was training their leadership and executive teams in the Canadian market how to capitalize on the momentum from those events. And then when people came into their stores, essentially they were running events within the stores, and we had to train the leadership teams and their store teams on how to sell one-to-many. So how to sell to large groups of people all at once. So I kind of had this PhD style education in running events from the best salesperson in the world. And Steve Jobs is a massive inspiration of mine, and rest his soul. It's a big loss for the world that he's no longer with us. But his legacy lives on in the events, and the Apple still is remarkable at doing these events. They've changed up the format quite a bit over the years, but they're still I think they're the world's largest organization, or at least close up there. The first company to ever get $1 trillion cap, and the reason for that is because of these events. Then I have a very colorful history myself personally, and while I was working for Apple at the time, some things started happening in my life that it was towards the end of my time there, and I woke up from a massive drug overdose on May 23 in 2017. And it was a really pivotal moment in my life. And when I woke up from the overdose, there was my mum, my dad, paramedic, and a police officer all looking down at me. And I had this moment of and this was just a thought process in my mind, like, oh my God, Brody, is this really how you want to live your life? But an involuntary fuck no came out of my mouth. I was responding to an internal dialogue, but it came out and everyone thought I was responding to them there. But what it highlighted for me was that at that point that I needed to figure out what was happening in my mind, my body, and my spirit. Now, I went on an amazing journey from there because I made a decision that the story of my past was no longer going to be the story of my future. I went into rehab. At that point, it was for the third time. I'd been in rehab in my early 20s. I was in my 30s at this point. And this time I decided I was going to fund the rehab myself so that I had some financial leverage over myself to be able to figure out what was happening. And I was actually bought into it. A couple of times I'd gone in my early 20s. I mostly went because I wanted my parents to get off my back.
Yeah.
And so that I could continue doing the nefarious things that I was up to. And there's this really pivotal moment at the rehab. The clinician said, your textbook, you've got complex PTSD. And I was like, you know what? This is not my story. Like, I don't want to have this as my story. I know that people that have PTSD, there's 3 outcomes. They either end up in jail, institutionalized, or dead. And I was institutionalized at that point. I was in a rehab and I almost died. So I was like, I don't want the other outcome. I don't want to end up in jail and I don't want to actually die. So look, I respect the diagnosis, but I utterly reject it. And I went on a personal development journey, which got me into personal development events. I was a junkie. I went to every event that I could get my hand on. And there was this beautiful, beautiful moment at a Tony Robbins event, Unleash the Power Within. I forgot to mention, look, I'm going to go deep for a second here. One of the things the reason why I overdosed is because in the 3 months prior to that, I'd been having these really violent, disconnected and jarring memories that I couldn't place and that were really scary and that were completely incomplete. And so I wasn't trusting my mind at the time. My drinking increased And then my drugging started happening again, and I relapsed on meth, my drug of choice in my youth. And then I had this overdose and whatnot. And it's because we got to a point where we realized that I had actually been sexually abused as a child. And from 6 years old through to that age at 31, I'd been driven by this unconscious, scared little boy that was driving everything that was happening in my life. And I'd had some success. I had a great career, all that sort of stuff. But behind the scenes, I was not an adult. I was still responding from this traumatic place.
Yeah.
At this Tony Robbins event, go to the event, and at the end of the third day, they do a process, and I was able to complete the trauma. And no other clinician, no other therapist had been able to help me get to this point. But at the end of this process, I was tears streaming down my face, and I rationalized at the time that, you know, if I wanted to move past this, if I wanted to continue with my future, then I really needed to forgive my abuser. Now, I don't know where he was. He was a teacher in school, but I sent out this energy and I said, I don't know where you are, but to do that to a little boy, you must have been in a severe amount of pain. And so for that, I forgive you. Now, I'm not a religious person. I got to tell you this, though. I know you are. I'm not a religious person. But what happened next, I can only describe as biblical in nature because I just don't have a reference point for it. I had this whoosh over my body where in the breath that I had forgiven him, suddenly it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. And then in that breath, I forgave myself. And in that forgiveness is where I really, in that moment, I found a future for myself because I'd forgiven myself from all the trauma that I'd put myself through, my family, what I'd done to my body. Like I trashed my body over the years. And then so at this event, I was like, okay, cool. If I can feel like this every day, that's right. And I started experiencing joy in the moment. And it was this kind of pure, unadulterated joy that I probably hadn't experienced since I was 6 years old when it happened. And so I was like, tears streaming down my face at this point, like happy tears now, wasn't traumatic tears. And I was like, look, you know, if I can get access to this level of joy every single day without drugs, alcohol, or anything like that, I'm never putting another mind-altering substance in my body ever again.
Yeah.
And so I haven't since that day. It's been 7.5 years now since then, since I did that. And in the next breath after this, I was like, okay, cool. I want every day to feel like this. And then the next breath was like, I want everyone to feel like this. And I made a commitment on that day that I was going to make my life be about impact. Fast forward, a couple of weeks later, I'm on what I now know to be a sales call with somebody. I was so green. Let's just jump on the phone and brainstorm some ideas together. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I handed over like my last $15,000 to start a business. And at that point, it was like a coaching business. And I was off the back of the work that I was doing at Apple. I'd been a lot of performance management of people. And so I did the first iteration of the business was about performance and like a performance coach. And I did my first ever event within my first month. And it was really interesting. I booked out this room. Naively, I did a Facebook boost of a Facebook event. And I had 40 people sign up to this event. And I was like, this is amazing. It's going to be incredible. And I get to the venue and then only one person showed up to this event. Yeah. And I was like gutted. This is my first kind of few weeks in being in business and everything. And I was like, I've done this before at Apple. I've managed like thousands of people. I've run large events for them up to 300 people, thousands of people coming into stores and selling one to many of them on a given day during launches. And I got one person in my room. Now, I could have given up at that point. I could have said, no, I'm not doing this. But I sat down and I delivered the content to this person and I made $20,000 from one person in my room.
That's awesome.
Yeah, right.
I kind of want to like pause there real quick because people get so focused on the initial outcome, like having a bunch of people in a room or having a lot of people show up to a conference or show up to an event. But you have one person show up and you're still committed to just doing the thing. And then you end up closing that one person, which is awesome because
it was the last thing I wanted to do too. Like I wanted to just run and hide. I was mortified, but thought, look, this person's given up their time. I have to respect that. And so it was great. And on that day, I made a decision that I was never going to have an empty room ever again. And I haven't since. And part of that was I had to figure out in this new environment, I didn't have Steve Jobs telling people to go to a store and buy an iPhone. I had to figure something else out that was more compelling. And I had to figure out the dynamics of marketing. I hadn't done marketing previously at this role at Apple. And I have really had to nut all that out. So fast forward, man, this is at the very beginning of 2019. In my first 10 weeks in my business, I made my first $100,000. In my first 6 months in business, I made $333,000. And by month 10, I'd crossed over $1 million in my first year. there was some clue in all of this that what I was doing was working. And suddenly people started asking me what I was doing, and I switched over to the business side. 2020, I was due to be on the road for 36 weeks of the year. It was my breakout year in business. And then I was living in Australia at the time, not here in New York City. And we shut down our borders because of the pandemic. And I lost millions of dollars overnight because I couldn't run events. We scheduled some in Australia. Then they kept locking us down. So we had to keep pushing them back. And then by end of July, I said to the team, I'm like, guys, okay, we got to run a virtual event. We've got to do something here. Like, this is not going to end anytime soon. We're so naive. My team at the time, they groaned. They're like, no, we can't do a virtual event. They suck, because people at the time weren't doing anything in studios. They still had their crappy cameras and they were just doing them on the kitchen counter and everything. And I was like, no. We're going to hold people on Zoom for 3 days for 16 hours a day. And they're going to walk out more energized than when they came in and saying it's the best event that they've ever been to in their life. My team were like, sure, Brody, like another fanciful idea. We did it. And I wasn't intending to really sell at this event. I had an inkling that, if it went well, then maybe I'd get some clients afterwards. But on the second day, I realized that we had over 100 people at this event. Everyone was so ready for it. We had music. We hired the same dude that does Tony Robbins music. Like, we went all out with this. I had studio with flashing lights. Like, we had a ball. And then I was like, this has got some legs. I better come up with something to sell. I had a mastermind at the time, jumped on, sold the mastermind, and I made $1 million in one day from that event. That's when I learned that I could print clients out of it.
That is crazy.
Yeah. So that's what's happened. We've perfected the model over the years. We're getting really good at it, and we started to see some really good traction with some of the big players in the industry. You know who I'm working with as well. And it's a lot of fun. I love events. Like, honestly, an event saved my life, and so I'm deeply committed to it. I know that if you can just change one person's life in an event like that, then the ripple-on effects of that are phenomenal. So that's the now longer version of that story.
I think that's just powerful, though. But it makes sense why it's something that you're so passionate about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the thing where, like, somebody, if they're overweight and they're health ridden and they're able to transform their lives and they feel the real benefit and the real transformative impact of it, then they want to go out and share with others as well. And then oftentimes those people become the best, like, fitness trainers and health coaches. And it's kind of like the same thing with you with the event, where the reason why you're so passionate about it is like you witness firsthand how powerful being in an environment like that could be. And not a lot of people have that. I mean, why do you think? Because until I heard your story, I've heard like Russell Brunson talk about like how awesome events are and things like that, but I've never even considered potentially doing it. And why do you think more people aren't doing events?
Fear, I'd say, and a misunderstanding of them. I think a lot of people see people like Russell and Tony Robbins, and they do all these massive events, and they think, I've got to put on a massive event. That's so scary. But the reality is that you can make money, you can do very, very well out of a small event. And I think people look at it and they just think it's too much to do. Only less than 1% of people in our industry actually do events as a sales acquisition strategy. And here's the thing, though. If you look at all of the different acquisition strategies in our industry, like, we're online businesses, right? That's pretty much where we are. Most of these strategies have only been invented in the last 25 years. They've been maybe an upgrade from an old direct marketing thing or something like that. But most of what we do is only 25 years old. Think about an event. Humans have been gathering at events to connect, to communicate, and engage in commerce since the dawn of time. It's actually hardwired into our DNA to want to be around other people that are like-minded, that are like us. And in fact, if you even go back to tribal times, right, people would get together and they would have these tribal experiences, and it was actually about life or death. They would actually need to be there with each other to protect the community from threats and whatnot. And so we haven't evolved that much over the last 300,000 years. We still need the same connection and the same in-person spark that happens. Not to get woo-woo or anything, but they've done studies. When people are in the same energy field as each other, the energy field sparks and they actually get this like beautiful connection. And so if you look at the strategies, I'll choose a 300,000-year-old strategy over a 25-year-old strategy any day of the week. It's been proven. We used to think of things like blood sports at the Colosseum. It was an event that made money that people actually came to. Think about the church, for example. Jesus Christ, other than Steve Jobs, I would say is probably one of the best he's probably the best salesperson of all time. He has an event running every single Sunday in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of locations around the world. He's no longer with us, and people still come to these events and they give up their hard-earned cash to the church, right? he's the best. Like, I would say him and Steve Jobs are the best two salespeople of all time. And so I think people are nervous about it. I don't think people see the opportunity that's available to them. I think they think it's a lot of work. And don't get me wrong, it is a bit of work to get them off the ground. But once you have a system running, like, there is a reason why Tony Robbins has been running the same event, Unleash the Power Within, the exact same event. He changes it like slightly, but it's the same thing for the last almost 50 years because it works. And he's made I'm assuming he's a billionaire now based off this event. And so, yeah. If anyone's out there listening, I hope that convinces you that you should be doing events as an acquisition strategy. One other thing, just to convince people and take them over the line with this, after the pandemic, people respect the connection that they have with other people, I find, on a much, much deeper level than beforehand. We were all starved of that connection during that period. And so what we're seeing is sales cycles increase in our industry as conversion drops and client acquisition costs increase. Getting people into a room means that they are actually more likely to buy your high ticket offer than if they were getting on a 45-minute sales call with you. The other thing that we're seeing some anecdotal evidence on at the moment with this, and I don't have stats yet to back this up, but what we're seeing is with our clients is that clients who join a high ticket program at an event actually become better clients over the long term, and churn reduces. Less people leave your programs. And the reason is, if you just compare it, have a 45-minute sales call where you can't really get into someone's world, you can't really demonstrate what you do, versus a 2-day event. The 2-day event is going to make people know, like, and trust you more and have an in-person experience with you, rather than you just being a talking head on a screen that they don't really have a connection with. And so,
and the 2-day event also, what that also allows you to do is you can also kind of like teach them a little bit and set them up to be for success when they do become a client. All right, they just consumed all this IP from you. They're speaking the same language as you. They understand your value proposition, and they actually do a little bit of homework to lay the foundation for when they do become a client. Like, that time to value for them is like very, very fast.
And on that note as well, because they're live with you in the room, they actually do the work with you live. So they leave with the work done, not a to-do list, and they get the ability to execute it on literally the same day, right? So one of our events, we have an event called the $1 Million Events Intensive. It's a 3-day event, and I've engineered it so that at the end of the first day, people can go out to market with their event and start marketing it. Now, I set a challenge for people called the Crack Cash Creator, and by the end of the 3 days, we actually challenge people to make their investment back by going out to market with their event. So they have the ability to generate cash on the first day, but then it becomes a little bit of a game in that they're cash neutral by the end of it, which helps me when I sell to them, because they've made their money back and they've got more cash now to invest in the next thing, which I'm selling to them. Yeah.
That's awesome though. But it's like you're helping them get the funds to invest into your premier thing.
Right.
You cheat me.
And we do bonuses, like we gamify it, we make it a competition and all that sort of stuff. It's a lot of fun. So yeah.
That's awesome. So for you, I mean, what are the key factors to putting on a really, really good event? Or like your core principles that if you're somebody who's thinking about doing that, are there things that they need to have in place in their business before they consider doing it? Or is it something that, because you started without really having a business, like your go-to-market strategy was like putting events together.
Yeah. First thing, before I get into like the nuts and bolts of the what from a readiness point of view, the number one thing that I think people need is a deep commitment to having a genuine impact on people's lives. What's beautiful about events is you can do it at scale. You can impact multiple people all at once in a very different way than you could if you just had like a one-to-one client. Something happens in the room. It's like brains pop off when they're all in the room conspiring together. And so that deep commitment's really, really important, because I'm just going to scare people here with this. Events are the highest risk acquisition strategy that you can have. There's a lot that goes into it. You put money behind it, and then it can completely flop. You know, I've had moments where I've flopped like that with that one person showing up at the event, right? And so it requires a certain type of dedication. Here's the other flip side of it, is that it offers the highest potential for reward if you do it well. And so given the opportunity to impact more lives and create more income, I'll take the risk on for sure, 1,000%. And so I want people to know going into it that there's no guarantees, like there's no guarantees of anything in life, but you've got to really want it. The second part is that in terms of readiness, look, no, I went to market straight away with an event as pretty much my first thing, right?
And that kind of almost makes sense with your background, because it's not like you've never done an event ever in your entire life and you just got this bright idea? Hey, I'm going to host an event. Right. So
Can't buy my shit. I don't know what I'm doing, right?
I don't want somebody listening and be like, oh, I could just do what Brody did. And just like, no, you've been doing the damn thing at Apple for how many years, right? Witnessing how it's done at a really high level firsthand. Yeah. And then you took a crack at it.
That's right. Yeah. And I did a poor man's job at it first time around. And that's a good example to people, is that you're not going to get it right the first time. So first of all, I want to limit people's expectations. Don't expect that you're going to come in and you're going to nail it straight away. Like, we've perfected this, myself and my team. So over the last 20 years, between myself and my team, we've done like 1,200 live and virtual events across different industries, various different things, right? So we've got a good understanding of kind of what works, what doesn't work. I'm a student of events. I go to people's events just to watch them sell. So what we've packed into our system is really, really good. It combines all of that experience. And for people that are just getting started with events, the first thing that I usually say to people is that you do need to have a proven high ticket offer. This is not something that I want you to just come up like on the back of a napkin and some pixie dust and then run an event around it. You can sell people into a program that it's got value, and that, that people are, when you do sign them into the event, they're going to be coming into an ecosystem that will support them. Guarantee you.
Which is, to interject, it fits the theme of what we talk about on this podcast. Like, you need to be good at the damn thing.
That's right.
I'm so sick of people marketing things because they read $100 million offer. They've never done the damn thing, and they just learn how to put a good offer together. It's like, get good at the thing. Like, be good at something if you want. Right. You start trying to sell it.
That's right. And then the other part of this is having a presence online helps, right? It's really hard to start with events when you're going to a cold audience. And so I don't like organic strategies. I don't think that they're great in terms of measurability, all that sort of stuff. But having a presence and having people kind of know who you are and what you're about does help. Other thing is, you need an ad budget for this stuff. For you to be you can do it organically. And look, at my first $1 million event, was fully organic. At that point, I was not running ads or anything. I didn't know how. Because I'd failed at the boost of that Facebook event. But if you don't have a budget, it makes it harder. And so we're really looking at people, you can do an event if you're making less than 100K per year, but just with the premise that it's going to be smaller, it's going to be a bit more intimate, and you're going to have to hustle from an organic point of view to get people to show up to this event. If you're running a paid strategy in between 100K, $1 million plus, you have a lot more flexibility with the ability for you to market and so on. I'll just give you an example. A client, very, very exceptional client, has a bit of a reputation in the industry, did their first event with us recently. And, they spent $6,000 on ads, and then they did a mixed organic and an ad campaign. They liquidated the funnel on the front end. They made something like $12,000 just from the funnel for getting people to register this virtual event. So they were cash positive before the event even started. And then at the event, they sold $300,000 at the event, which is an amazing return. They had a negative acquisition cost. And they were able to sell this high ticket thing at a one-day event. So it helps if you've got the stuff already. Yeah.
So if you're good, one, you need to be good at what you're doing.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. Two, having some type of presence online where somebody finds out about your event and they want to do a little due diligence, which everyone does now. They want to look you up and make sure they're not getting scammed by some random person in Timbuktu. Right?
Some Nigerian prince that's come to save them. Yes.
Yes. I hate that reference because I'm actually a Nigerian prince.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I didn't know it.
No. It's really good.
Sorry.
No. I hate it in a funny way because I'm one of the few people that can actually say that.
Yeah.
But it's been used so much.
But to your point,
I can't even touch it.
Let me recover, because to your point, right, there is a lot of people, I was really brash when I started out, right? I was like, I'm going to run an event. Look, I had some experience beforehand. So to your point earlier, I could actually come out and do this, and I had this experience. But, there's a lot of people on the market. There's a lot of yahoos. A lot of people that make those big claims that they can't back up, and then they do a disservice to the industry, but also to the people that they're working with as well. So if you have a social media following, you have a bit of a list going as well. It doesn't need to be a huge list, like a couple thousand, you can get started. and then you've got an ad budget, I think you're in a really good position to be able to scale up with your events.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask on the event side, so you need to be good at what you do. You need to have some type of presence online. Like, how important is it to have like your story that you want to tell at the event? Like, what role does storytelling play in putting like an event together and making sure it's successful?
I would say that storytelling is probably the most important part of your event. Everyone gets into business for a reason. And then usually the reason is that there's something has happened in their life, there's been some pivotal moment, and they've made a decision that they don't want to live like they were living before. They want to come in and they want to have a genuine impact on people's lives. And yeah, of course, we all want to make money. We know that, right? You wouldn't get into business if you didn't want to do it. It takes a certain breed of person to get in. Now, as you go through your event, your job is to increase the know, like, and trust factor with people so that they are more inclined to purchase from you. Telling your story and weaving it through and anecdotes from your life humanizes you in a level that you can't really get on a 45-minute sales call. And it really does create a lot of intimacy with your audience. I'm not saying that you need to have a story like mine, sexually abused, drug addict, all that sort of stuff, right? But something compelling that gets people to understand why you operate the way you do, how the thing that has come about that you're presenting, and building up some authority for yourself through that process. The second part about this is that it's not just I'm telling my story at the beginning. Throughout the event, and one of the things that I learned from observing other events is that when you're teaching something at the event, I'm giving a little bit away here, but you teach something at the event, before you teach that thing, if you tell a story about your life and tell a story that relates maybe not directly, but conceptually to what you're about to teach and how you maybe achieved the thing that you're about to teach without explicitly telling them that's what you're doing in that story. It contextualizes what you teach and it builds a little bit more buy-in into what you're teaching because people will make connections both with themselves and the experiences that they've had in their life where they resonate with you. And it actually opens up their brain a little bit more to be able to receive the information that you're then delivering and then for them to be able to execute, which means that time to value is decreased. The second part about storytelling is the storytelling of your clients as well. So everyone in the room wants social proof. They want to know with certainty that they're making a decision, that they're in the right place, they're in the right room to begin with. But then when you get to actually selling your offer, that you've got the proof in the pudding and they've got people that are like them with the same problems that they had that have experienced those results. And so I would say that like the bulk of your event actually becomes storytelling. And I think a lot of people screw that up because they run an event and they just deliver content. And then at the end, they throw in oh, by the way, buy my shit. And it doesn't create buy-in, it doesn't create intimacy. And so you'll notice your conversion drops if you're not great at storytelling. Thankfully, like in everything we teach a really good model for this. We make sure that people are very well trained and they have their signature story and all of that sort of stuff. And they weave storytelling the whole way through the event.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think is really important that you mentioned, because one of the things I noticed even with going through some of your event stuff is like having the stories that you need that really set the stage for, one, creating the gap, but then two, also showing like what does that look like? What does the other side of that bridge look like? And then everything that you're teaching becomes kind of like parts of the bridge to get them there. But it's like they're not going to get fully there. They're going to leave with a result, but they're not going to have the full thing. And then essentially that sets it up for them to actually do business with you, which I think is it's awesome to going through and actually starting to study it. The other side I'll even say here is I don't like doing anything without coaching or guidance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It's one of those things where knowledge and proximity is what has resulted in every single thing that's been great in my life. I can trace it back down to getting the right information at the right time and just being around the right people.
Yeah. Being in the room, right? It's just something magical happens when you're in the room that just can't happen on a camera as much as magical as this is. I love virtual and I love live. They both got their perks, right? But there's something just about being in that space where you've got the hand of a professional guiding you and also the brain trust of other people in the room that have different experiences that can help you see things in different ways. It really does compound. And this is like in our virtual events, we try and recreate those with experiences and things like that in the event. Like we engineer those type of experiences so people can get that. It's one of the most commented things on our virtual events is people love connecting with other people that they don't normally get on other virtual events because people just talk at them for like hours on end. Just on that, what you said before around, not giving them everything. There's this old kind of saying in sales is like, and you got to solve a problem and create a problem. I don't like it so much, but the concept is, I don't like the idea of inflicting pain upon people, right? But what happens is when you teach something to someone, logically, there's going to be a problem or a risk that happens downstream from that, or something else that they need to solve next. So your job is to, when you're at the event, solve the problem that you told them you were going to solve at the event. Absolutely give your all, give everything, don't hold anything back, give your best stuff away and over deliver in that sense. But then when you're making your sale at the end, obviously there's going to be, they're going to be in a buying pocket, first of all, because they've resolved a challenge, but it's your job to educate them about what will happen next. And then when you sell to them, you sell the solution to what will happen next so that their stress levels go down and they feel confident and certain. I think sometimes people make the mistake if they make a sell that's completely unrelated to anything that they've delivered at the event. It's just like, hey, here's the value. And then, oh, by the way, I have this program that's amazing. I construct every single one of my pitches around the loops that I've left open throughout the event, and it increases conversion. And just to give you some numbers here, depending on the room, Zooming, stuff like that, we have people converting in our client base anywhere from 30% up to 85%, depending on the size of the room. Obviously, you get higher when there's a smaller number of people in the room. And so this all plays a really pivotal part in that. And it requires a lot of thinking, a lot of engineering, and a lot of specificity in the way in which you construct each part of your event. I'll say this last thing on that. There's not a single thing that comes out of your mouth at an event that is not constructed with the sale in mind. You are selling from the moment you step on stage, and anyone that thinks otherwise doesn't know what they're doing.
So essentially, I mean, the event, you got to have it you got to know what the purpose of it is.
Yep.
And then you need to make sure when you're hosting an event, it's being done in a way that's congruent with what you're, like, the core big problem that you actually solve. So, like, how does the problem that you're going to solve at the event fit into the bigger scope of what you're trying to solve for whoever's going to be attending?
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
And then making sure everything that you're doing from, like, the topics and what you're talking about at the event is all congruent with, like, the bigger thing that you're actually trying to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And like, here's a really good example of this. So, like, one of our old events that we used to run called Impact, actually, that's what these shirts were made for. What we would do is we had a model on how we helped people grow their businesses, and there were 4 parts to this model. And so at the event, what we would do is we would just teach, and within each of those 4 parts, there was 3 different things that they needed to learn. We would just teach one of the 3 things from each of the modules, leaving open a gap that, you need these other things as well. It was very clear. It was very explicit to people. And it was very simple. People got tons of value. They got stuff done. And then the other things we just solved, we just said, when we make our sale, we just say, hey, look, these other things that you've seen in the model that we didn't get time to complete here, this is what's available to you, and this will help you get to your result faster.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you can make it congruent, then you're like, hey, working with you becomes a next logical step, right? They've already got all this value. They've solved this problem, and you can't solve everything. Even if you're trying to help them at the event, there's an expiration date there. And even if you were to do all that you could to help them implement, there's still going to be some gaps that are left that they're going to need more time to work with you on. So all of that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, there's something else I just want to touch on here as well. There are 5 conversion categories, things that need to happen for people to be able to get into that buyer's pocket. First of all, they need a vision that's larger than themselves, and they also need a vision to buy into, which is why it's really important, and I'll share a little bit of mine later on, of why they buy into your vision as well and how they fit into your vision. And this is, again, storytelling, right? Then they need a plan on how to get there. So that's the model. That's the specific, like, okay, cool, like, how do I get there? Then they need skills and tools. You've demonstrated how you've given them some skills and tools at the event. Then they need to be in the right environment. And so you leverage the fact that, hey, hasn't it been really cool that you've been around these awesome people? Well, why don't we continue that on by working with us? And then they need the right mindset as well. And so the mindset piece is kind of important because once they leave that room, the guardrails are off. They no longer have your support. And so if you position it well enough, is the next logical step is actually joining with us for the ongoing implementation so that when you go back out into the real world, you can get our support and guidance to continue on. And I think this idea of vision, we spend a lot of time on this at our events. We talk about their vision and our vision, the intersection of them, and we get them dreaming really, really big. The other part about this is if you get someone dreaming really, really big, right? People don't continue in life in anything when they don't see a future. whether it's in their personal life, but also in business programs and whatnot. If they don't see something that's larger than themselves that they're working towards, they won't continue, they won't buy the next thing. And so that vision piece is incredibly important. I just wanted to end on that there.
I think the vision is really important because one of my mentors told me, like, people are willing to really go out of their comfort zone where they're most inspired, right? People are driven to escape pain, right? So they're willing to do things to escape pain, but they're not willing to do a ton of things to get out of their comfort zone unless they're inspired to do so. So if you can cast a really good vision or help them dream and see a bigger vision for where they want to be, that's ultimately going to inspire them to get out of their comfort zone, be willing to make the investment and take the risk in the hopes of actually getting there. So I want to be able to close out with you sharing your big vision, because I think the vision that you have is awesome. And then 2, what is like I'm going to rapid fire some of these so you can have them and simmer on them a little bit. Big vision, favorite quote for the last year, and what's like the best lesson or advice you've been given.
Okay, yeah, 1,000%. So here's the big vision. So a couple of years ago, I posted on one of our business socials. I was like, one day we're going to do one of our events from space. And I was like, ha, not thinking anything of it, like put it aside. It was just like a thought bubble moment. Then one of my former clients reached out the next week and sends me this newspaper, like an article online from Architectural Digest of all places, about a hotel that they're building in space. And this hotel is going to host 280 people, 120 staff, so 400 people on it at any given time. And they said at the time that it was going to be ready by 2027. This was like 2 years ago. And in my mind, I'm like, holy shit, this is no longer a harebrained idea. This is a plan. I have to fulfill this. And originally, I was going to do a business event and take some people up, and it was going to be fun or whatever. After a while, I got a little bit unsettled with it, and I kind of had this moment of realization. I'm like, oh my god, that's why I'm so unsettled. Rich white dude goes to space with other rich people. That story has been told. We've got 3 people that have been up to space now that are not from the government, and 2 of them people really hate, like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Richard Branson, everyone kind of seems to love, but so I'm like, I don't want that to be the story. I wanted to create a different narrative. I have an opportunity here to do something that's never been done before that will have a genuine impact on the lives of humanity. And so I thought about it for a long time. It was about 6 months of me kind of percolating. And where we landed, and this is what we're building, is that we're going to create the world's largest ever Live Aid style philanthropic production that we will broadcast from space for 24 hours and reach 8 billion people on the planet. We're going to take 280 people up with us. We're going to auction off some spots to rich people to help fund it. We're going to put some people up there that would traditionally not get access to going to space, people from marginalized communities and whatnot. And we're going to create something that unites humanity. And the goal is we're going to raise $10 billion for charity. We'll heavy governments for donations as well. That $10 billion will then be put into a humanity future fund. And then every single year for the rest of in perpetuity, there'll be about $500 million that will be like paid out to worthy causes forever. And it's so exciting, man. Like I can't tell you how juicy I get goosebumps talking about it, because nothing like this has ever been done before. I'm absolutely batshit crazy for thinking of it, but I'm so committed to it. I don't care if it doesn't happen in 2027. It's going to happen in my lifetime. This hotel will be built. Hilton doing the interiors, which is insane. It's going to be a Hilton in space. And I'm going to go up. I want to be on camera for 24 hours. I want to do this. It's not a vanity exercise for me. And this builds into the quote. This is something that's deeply, deeply ingrained in my core. We do a lot of philanthropic work already. We use the money that we make as muscle to invest in worthy causes that I care deeply about. Things like feeding people. We've got 800 million people experience food insecurity every single day. They don't know where their next meal is going to come from. 2 billion people don't have adequate clean water. 4 billion people don't have adequate sanitation. Climate change, we know that that's the biggest existential threat of our time. And then 50 million children are trafficked for sex every year. So they're things that I'm passionate about, like resolving. 75% of the world's wealth is concentrated in the top 20%, and the top 1% have 5 times more wealth than the bottom 80% combined. Now, I don't want to get into a slinging match. I've realized that yelling at people, I'm part of the 1% now. Yelling at people is not going to get them to change behavior, but I'll sell for them. I'll put them in space. I'll ask for their donations, and we'll give that money to the people that are below the poverty line, because we know this. For every $1 that's invested below the poverty line, another $5 is created in the economy. And you create this circular thing from the bottom up that's not a zero-sum game where everybody wins. People use that money. If you just give money to people that are below the poverty line, they invest in education, they save, they build businesses and so on. So we're going to do this. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be something that everyone can buy into. We're going to make it super equitable as well. And we're going to have a really, really powerful impact on humanity over the long term. Part of this vision, there's two parts of this, other parts. We're going to run events as we're building this on the ground for people who have big planet-changing ideas and put them through a process that gets them to take those ideas to market and gets them access to venture capitalists as well. And eventually, I figured over the next 50 years, events in space will become a market. And so we'll be the pioneers. We'll have invented IP, all this sort of stuff. And so we'll be able to create a whole industry out of that as well. So that's it. That's the vision. Now, here's the quote to tap that off. There's two quotes that are really deeply ingrained in what I do. And the first one is, what if every time we do business, something good happens in the world? What if every time we do business, something good happens in the world? Capitalism can be used for good. We know that. It's lifted more people out of poverty than any other monetary system combined for all of its faults. It's the best we got. So let's use it and let's make sure that that we do good with it as well. Other quote is kind of the premise of what this space event is based around. An old futurist called Buckminster Fuller came up with a statement, and I've paraphrased it and massaged it a bit into a question. And the question is, what if we could make the world work for 100% of humanity, 100% of the time, without damaging the environment or harming people? I live in that question every single day because it is possible. We know it's possible. We have accomplished so much since the industrialization. We've lifted so many people out of poverty. We've created more wealth. As much as there is wealth inequality now, we've created more wealth than ever before. Every bit of money that we ever want actually exists. We just need to figure a way to tap into it, to leverage it across humanity, to do some really, really good stuff with it. So that's what I'm doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Brody, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. We didn't even talk about, like, how does somebody find out about you? Like, where do they find you? Like, I know you wrote a book, so would that make sense? So
Capital Information Get Me. So on all socials, it's Brody Lee. We'll drop it into the notes on this. You can go to 𝐓𝐡sconsulting.co, 𝐓𝐡sconsulting.co, and you can that's our website. And love to support. I've got a book called $1 Million Events. Great place to start. We'll drop the link to that below as well. And we've got some amazing training and stuff that you can get access to too. So I'll give all of that to Iggy. You can check it all out. But would love to work with anyone that's interested. We do wonderful things. We've got an amazing, amazing product. And for me, it's deeply personal. Like I said, I want you to have that ripple-on effect out throughout humanity. Beautiful things happen when they're in the room, and I'd encourage anyone in business to seriously consider it as an acquisition strategy.
Well, we'll put all those things in the show notes for those who are listening. It will be in the show notes. It will be in the description wherever you're watching this or listening to this. We'll make it easy for you to get access to it. Brody, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. For those of you who are listening, definitely check them out. And I think I love everything that you stand for and what you're doing. And it's a part of like the ethos for what we stand for here with the podcast. So guys, for like, subscribe, share, whatever you want. But till next time, stay calm, change lives, and have business on your terms.